Roman dawn painted the Vatican's ancient walls in hues of amber and rose, casting long shadows across the cobblestones of the Cortile del Belvedere. Vice President J.D. Vance stood at the edge of the courtyard, his breath visible in the crisp May air, adjusting the cuffs of his charcoal suit. Beside him, Usha Vance smoothed the hem of her emerald dress, her eyes scanning the ornate surroundings with a mix of awe and curiosity. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and his wife, Jeanette, stood a few paces behind, murmuring quietly, while a young aide named Clara clutched a velvet-lined box containing the day's centerpiece, a Chicago Bears jersey for Pope Leo XIV, the first American pontiff. The delegation's footsteps echoed as they approached the Apostolic Palace, where the Swiss Guard stood sentinel, their halberds gleaming under morning light. This was no ordinary visit. Pope Leo XIV, formerly Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost of Chicago's south suburbs, had ascended to the papacy on May 8, 2025, a historic moment that had electrified the United States. A son of Dolton, Illinois, Leo was an Augustinian priest whose homespun warmth and theological rigor had won global admiration. For Vance, a Catholic convert since 2019, this meeting was a chance to honor the pontiff's roots while navigating the delicate fault lines of their differing views, particularly on immigration, where Leo's ex-post as a cardinal had hinted at disapproval of the Trump administration's policies. The jersey, emblazoned with Pope Leo XIV and signed by Vance, Usha, and their son Ewan, was meant to bridge that gap with a touch of Midwestern charm. As they entered the Sala Clementina, the delegation was met by Monsignor Paul Gallagher, the Vatican Secretary for Relations with States, whose sharp eyes softened at the sight of Clara's box. "A gift from the heartland, I presume?" he asked, his Liverpool accent unexpected in this hallowed space. Vance nodded, a grin breaking through his usual reserve. "Something to remind His Holiness of home," he said. Gallagher chuckled, then whispered to Clara, "I grew up in Chicago, Bears fan through and through. Don't tell the Holy Father I said that." The heavy doors to the private audience chamber opened, revealing a room both grand and intimate, its walls adorned with frescoes of angels and martyrs. Pope Leo XIV sat at a simple oak desk, his white cassock catching the light streaming through a high window. His face, weathered yet kind, broke into a smile as he rose to greet them. "Vice President Vance, Mrs. Vance, Secretary Rubio, Mrs. Rubio, welcome," he said, his voice carrying the flat vowels of Chicago's South Side. "You've brought a piece of America with you, I hear." Vance stepped forward, shaking the pontiff's hand. "Your Holiness, it's a privilege. Chicago's bursting with pride, and we wanted to bring a little of that here." He gestured to Clara, who opened the box to reveal the navy and orange Bears jersey. The room went quiet as Leo lifted it, his eyes widening at the Pope Leo XIV on the back, the number 14 stitched in bold white. Then, to everyone's surprise, he burst out laughing. "A Bear jersey?" he said, holding it up. "I thought you'd bring me a White Sox cap. You know I was at the '05 World Series, right?" The room erupted in laughter, and Vance, caught off guard, scrambled to recover. "Your Holiness, I figure a Bears jersey might keep you warm during those Vatican winters. Besides, Ewan insisted on signing it. He's convinced you'll wear it for Super Bowl." Leo's laughter faded into a warm grin as he noticed the signatures. "Ewan, huh? Tell him I'll keep this close. Maybe I'll slip it on when the Bears play the Packers, though I suspect St. Peter's Square might riot if I did." The delegation chuckled, but Clara, the aide, blushed furiously, whispering to Usha, "I told him a Sox jersey would have been safer." Usha, ever composed, stepped forward. "Your Holiness, we also brought something for your library." She presented 2 leather-bound volumes, St. Augustine's Confessions and On the Trinity. J.D. chose these because Augustine's your order's heart, and he's his patron saint. We thought they'd resonate. Leo's expression softened as he accepted the books, his fingers tracing the gold lettering. "This is deeply thoughtful," he said. "Augustine's wrestling with faith and reason. It's a mirror for our times. I carry his word with me daily, especially now." His gaze met Vance's, and for a moment, the room felt smaller, the weight of their shared faith palpable. "You know, Vice President, Augustine wrote of a city not built by hands. We're all striving for that, aren't we? Even when we disagree on the path." Vance nodded, sensing the subtle reference to their policy differences. He'd read the ex-post. Leo, as Cardinal Prevost, had called mass deportations a wound to human dignity. Yet here, the Pontiff's tone was gentle, inviting dialogue rather than confrontation. "Absolutely, Your Holiness," Vance said. "That's why I'm here, not just with gifts, but with a message from President Trump." He handed over a sealed letter, its wax crest gleaming. "It's an invitation to the White House. The President and First Lady are thrilled about your election. They'd love to host you, maybe even catch a Bears game." Leo took the letter, his smile polite but guarded. "At some point," he said, setting it on the desk. "The Vatican keeps me busy, but I'm grateful. Tell the President I pray for him and for America." The words were warm, but Vance caught the careful phrasing, a reminder of the Pontiff's global perspective. Rubio, sensing the shift, spoke up. "Your Holiness, we also want to discuss peace efforts, Ukraine, the Middle East. The President values the Vatican's role as a mediator. We'd love your insights." Leo leaned forward, his hands clasped. "Peace is a fragile flower," he said, a phrase he'd later echo in his gift. "In Ukraine, we see such suffering. Families torn apart, homes destroyed. The Vatican has offered to host talks, and I pray for leaders who choose dialogue over division. The same in the Middle East. Every life lost is a loss to God's creation." His words were measured, but Vance felt the challenge beneath them, a call to align policy with compassion. The conversation stretched over an hour, weaving through religious freedom, the plight of persecuted Christians, and the role of faith in governance. Clara, the Chicago-born aide, chimed in unexpectedly, sharing a memory of attending Mass with her family at St. Jude's in Dolton, where Leo had once served. "You used to give us kids extra cookies after Sunday school," she said, blushing. Leo laughed, his eyes crinkling. Guilty as charged. "Those cookies were my best homily." As the meeting wound down, Leo gestured to a side table. "I have gifts for you, too," he said. He presented Vance with a silver medallion, engraved with Pax est Flos Fragilis. "Peace is a fragile flower." "A reminder," Leo said, "that our work must protect what's delicate." He also handed over a slim volume of his own homilies, written during his Chicago days. "These are from my heart," he said. "I hope they speak to yours." Vance accepted the gifts, his throat tight. "Thank you, Your Holiness. I'll treasure these, and I'll pray for you as you carry this mantle." He paused and added, "Ewan's counting on that jersey making an appearance." Leo grinned. "Tell Ewan I'll pray for a Bears touchdown and for him." As the delegation left the chamber, Clara lingered, whispering to Leo about her family's pride in their shared Dolton roots. The Pontiff patted her hand, promising to visit her old parish if he returned to Chicago. Outside, in the Vatican's sunlit halls, Rubio clapped Vance on the shoulder. "That jersey was a bold move," he said. "Risky, but it worked." Usha linked her arm with Vance's. "You surprised him," she said. "That's no small thing." Vance nodded, his mind replaying the moment Leo laughed at the jersey. He'd expected a polite smile, not that unguarded joy. It felt like a small miracle, a crack in the wall of their differences, as they moved toward their next meeting. With Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and European leaders, Vance carried the medallion in his pocket, its weight a reminder of Leo's words. Back in America, the jersey gift sparked a frenzy. Ex-posts exploded with memes of Pope Leo in Bears gear, one captioned, "From Dolton to the Vatican. Pope Leo's got Chicago swagger." The Chicago Tribune ran a story. Vance's Bears jersey scores with Pope Leo XIV. But some criticized the choice, noting Zelensky's gift of a sacred icon. "A jersey versus Madonna and Child?" one user posted. Vance is playing a different game. In his hotel that night, Vance scrolled through the reactions, chuckling at the memes but sobering at the critiques. He thought of Augustine's confessions, of the saint's struggle to align his heart with God's. Leo, with his medallion and his homilies, was a pastor first, a diplomat second, and Vance, navigating faith and power, knew he'd need both to face the challenges ahead. The morning sun cast a golden glow over Vatican City, its light filtering through the ancient stone arches of the Apostolic Palace. Vice President J.D. Vance adjusted his tie, a subtle navy with a faint pattern of stars, as he stood in the grand corridor leading to the papal audience chamber. His wife, Usha, stood beside him, her expression calm but alert, her hand lightly resting on his arm. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and his wife, Jeanette, followed closely, their footsteps echoing softly on the polished marble floor. The air was heavy with the scent of old wood and incense, a reminder of the centuries of history that permeated every corner of this sacred place. Vance's delegation, small but significant, included his chief of staff, Luke Schroeder, and a young aide carrying a carefully wrapped package. The group moved with purpose, their faces a mix of anticipation and reverence, aware of the historic weight of this moment. They were here to meet Pope Leo XIV, the first American-born Pontiff, a Chicago native whose election on May 8, 2025, had sent ripples of pride and excitement across the United States. Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, now Pope Leo, had risen from humble beginnings in South suburban Dolton to lead the global Catholic Church. His selection had been a surprise to many, but his reputation as a compassionate yet firm leader, rooted in his Augustinian background, had quickly won hearts. For Vance, a Catholic convert since 2019, this meeting was more than diplomatic. It was personal. He had chosen gifts that reflected both his faith and the pontiff's roots, hoping to bridge the gap between their differing views on policy, particularly immigration, which had already sparked tension. The heavy wooden doors to the audience chamber swung open, and a Swiss guard in his vibrant blue and yellow uniform nodded solemnly, ushering them inside. The room was vast yet intimate, its walls adorned with frescoes depicting scenes of salvation and sacrifice. At the far end, seated at a simple wooden desk, was Pope Leo XIV. His presence was striking. His white cassock contrasted with the rich reds and golds of the room, and his eyes, warm but piercing, seemed to take in every detail of his visitors. He rose as they entered, a small smile playing on his lips, and gestured for them to approach. Vice President Vance, Mrs. Vance, Secretary Rubio, Mrs. Rubio, Pope Leo said, his voice carrying a faint Midwestern cadence that felt oddly familiar to Vance, like a conversation with an old friend from Ohio. Welcome to the Vatican. It's a joy to see you all. Vance stepped forward, extending his hand. Your Holiness, it's an honor. As you can probably imagine, people in the United States are extremely excited about you. He grinned, hoping to lighten the mood. Chicago, especially. They're claiming you as their own. Pope Leo chuckled, shaking Vance's hand firmly. They've been good to me, those Chicagoans. I hear they've even put up an art installation at Guaranteed Rate Field to mark my seat from the 2005 World Series. White Sox, of course, not Cubs. His eyes twinkled with mischief, and the room relaxed slightly, the ice broken. Usha smiled, stepping forward. We brought a few things to celebrate your new role and your roots, your holiness. We hope they resonate. The aide stepped forward, carefully unwrapping the package to reveal a navy and orange Chicago Bears jersey. Emblazoned on the back was Pope Leo in bold white letters, with a number 14 beneath it. The jersey was signed with flourish by Vance, Usha, and their son, Ewan, a personal touch that Vance hoped would convey warmth. The room stilled for a moment as Pope Leo took the jersey, holding it up to examine it. His face broke into a broad grin. Good choice, he said, his voice rich with amusement. He turned the jersey over, noting the signatures. And signed by the family, no less. This is special. I might have to wear it under my vestments for the next Bears game. The group laughed, and Vance felt a wave of relief. The gift had landed well, despite the undercurrent of tension from their differing views. There's more, Vance said, nodding to the aide, who produced 2 leather-bound books. These are for you, your holiness. St. Augustine's The City of God, and on Christian doctrine. I chose them because, well, you're the first Augustinian pope, and St. Augustine is my patron saint. I thought they might mean something to you. Pope Leo's expression softened as he took the books, running his fingers over the embossed covers. This is thoughtful, Vice President. Augustine's words have guided me since my days in the order, his vision of a world ordered by love and justice. It's a heavy mantle to carry, but one I'm honored to take up. He paused, his gaze meeting Vance's. You know, Augustine wrestled with the tensions of his time, much like we do now. Faith and governance, mercy and justice. They're not always easy to balance. Vance nodded, sensing the subtle shift in tone. He knew Pope Leo had been critical of the Trump administration's immigration policies, having shared posts on X as Cardinal Prevost that decried mass deportations. The Vatican had not confirmed those posts, but the sentiment was clear. Vance had prepared for this moment, hoping to keep the conversation cordial. Your Holiness, I agree. It's a challenge to align our duties with our faith. That's why I'm here, not just to bring gifts, but to deliver a letter from President Trump and First Lady Melania. He handed over a cream-colored envelope, sealed with the presidential crest. It's an invitation to visit the White House. The president is thrilled about your election, as am I. He called an honor to witness this historic moment. We'd love for you to come to America, to see the excitement firsthand. Pope Leo took the letter, his expression unreadable for a moment. He set it on the desk and nodded. At some point, he said simply, his tone polite but non-committal. I have much to do here, but I'm grateful for the invitation. He paused and added, the American people's enthusiasm is humbling. I carry them in my prayers. The conversation turned to broader matters. Rubio, ever the diplomat, spoke up, Your Holiness, we also want to discuss some international issues. The president is committed to pursuing peace, particularly in Ukraine and the Middle East. We know the Vatican has offered to mediate in the past, and we'd value your perspective. Pope Leo leaned forward, his hands clasped. Peace is a fragile flower, he said, echoing the inscription on the gift he would soon present. The Vatican has always sought to foster dialogue, to protect the dignity of every person. In Ukraine, in the Middle East, anywhere conflict rages, we must uphold humanitarian law and seek negotiated solutions. I'm encouraged to hear the president shares this commitment. The discussion lasted nearly 40 minutes, touching on religious freedom, the persecution of Christians, and the role of faith in public life. Vance listened intently, occasionally glancing at Usha, who nodded subtly in support. He knew the meeting was a delicate dance. Pope Leo's inaugural Mass the previous day had included remarks that some interpret as a critique of the Trump administration's immigration policies, with references to discord and exploitation. Yet here, in this room, the Pontiff was gracious, his focus on shared goals rather than division. As the meeting drew to a close, Pope Leo stood and gestured to a small table where his gifts waited. I have something for you as well, he said. He presented Vance with a bronze sculpture, its surface etched with the Italian phrase Lapis ean fiore fragile. Peace is a fragile flower. A reminder, he said, that our work, whether in governance or faith, must nurture what is delicate and precious. He also handed Vance a large, beautifully bound book of photographs depicting the papal apartments. Pope Francis chose not to live there, he said with a wry smile. I'm still deciding, but these images capture the history of this place. I hope you'll find them inspiring. Vance accepted the gifts with a bow of his head. Thank you, Your Holiness. These mean a great deal, and I'll pray for you as you carry this immense responsibility. Pope Leo's eyes softened. I'm sure we will meet again, he said. And please, tell Ewan I'll treasure his signature on that jersey. The delegation exchanged final pleasantries, and as they stepped back into the corridor, Vance felt a mix of relief and resolve. The meeting had been warm, but the undercurrents were undeniable. Pope Leo was a man of deep conviction, and his vision of mercy clashed with the administration's hardline stance on immigration. Yet the gifts, the jersey, the books, the sculpture had created a bridge, however fragile, between their worlds. As they walked through the Vatican's sunlit courtyards, Rubio leaned in. That went better than expected, he murmured. He's tough, but he's open to dialogue. Usha squeezed Vance's hand. You did well, she said softly. The jersey was a hit. Vance smiled, picturing the Pontiff in his Bears jersey, perhaps watching a game in the quiet of the Vatican. Let's hope he comes to the White House, he said. I'd love to see him in the stands at Soldier Field. The group moved toward their next meeting, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and European leaders, but Vance's mind lingered on encounter. He knew the road ahead would be complex. navigating the intersection of faith, policy, and power. But for now, the image of Pope Leo holding that jersey, his face lit with a genuine smile, was a small victory, a moment of connection in a world too often divided. The rest of the day unfolded in a blur of diplomacy. Vance met with Zelensky, whose own meeting with Pope Leo had been longer and more intimate, a fact that stung slightly given the Pontiff's brief handshake with Vance after the inaugural Massachusetts European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, an Italian. Premier Giorgia Meloni joined later discussions, their focus on a potential ceasefire in Ukraine. The Vatican's offer to host peace talks hung in the air, a reminder of the Church's enduring role in global affairs. Back in the United States, news of the Bears jersey gift spread quickly. Social media buzzed with images of Pope Leo holding the jersey, with posts joking about the Pontiff's newfound fandom. Chicago was able to produce a pope before the Bears had a 4,000-yard passer.